Welcome to Aligned AF, real talk for evolving souls with Yahweh Kent. Join Yahweh for honest conversations on spiritual growth, the messiness of life, and how to move through it all at a higher frequency. So grab a cup of tea and let's sail in. This is Aligned AF, and here's Yahweh.
And welcome to Aligned AF, Real Talk for the Evolving Soul. I'm Yahweh, you guys know that. And today's episode is one that I've really looked forward to. We're going to be diving into the magic, the real work of embracing your authentic path. My guest today is someone who truly walks that path. Shelly Wilson is an intuitive medium, a Reiki master, life coach, and the author of several inspiring books, including 28 Days to a New You, Connect to the You Within, and Embracing the Magic Within. Her work is rooted in empowerment and in healing and in helping others reconnect to their soul truth. Shelly and I go back a few years. I've witnessed firsthand the grounded and compassionate energy that she brings to everything she does. So today we're going to explore what it really means to trust yourself, follow your calling, and overcome the inner and outer noise that sometimes tries to dim our light. So grab yourself a cup of something grounding because we are going to dive in. This is Aligned AF. Shelly Wilson, welcome to the show.
Yahweh, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share a conscious conversation with you today.
Well, or a subconscious or maybe unconscious, who knows?
Maybe all of the above.
Maybe all of the above. Everything, everywhere, all at once, right? All right. Well, it's a real honor to have you here today. I love your work. I love your energy. I love your hugs. And I'm really, really glad that we finally connected so that we could have this conversation. So could you start out and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Well, first of all, the best way to describe it is I've always known things. I've been sensitive to energies. I was raised in the Baptist religion, and my dad is a civil engineer. And I'm in Oklahoma, even though I was born in Kansas. But, raised in that type of environment definitely was not necessarily conducive to asking a lot of questions, wanting to explore more, at least from my perspective initially. And then now that I've had what I perceive to be awakening, is recognizing too that those experiences were absolutely perfect. Recognizing too that the life experiences that we have, along with the wisdom that comes along with age, helps us to really get to that point of understanding and awareness too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to trust a teacher who claims they can help you get somewhere if they haven't been there themselves.
Yes, and as we know, a lot of people have, different kinds of challenges in life, different
Yeah,
experiences. And to me, all of that is the perfect experience for us.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, Oklahoma is not really known for its liberal mindedness, let's say, and no offense to any of the Oklahoma
Right.
listeners, because probably if you're listening to this, you are pretty open minded. So what kind of obstacles have you bumped into living where you do and doing what you do?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because, I don't want to say that we're underground or behind the scenes or in the closet or anything like that, but there actually is a huge spiritual community in Oklahoma. And I think a lot of us realize too that we're here for a reason, that even though that there may be people that don't agree with us or have the same beliefs, that we can still hold the light and create that space. And
Yeah.
Cindy Green has been hosting spirit fairs in Oklahoma for over 30 years. And I've
Wow.
been grateful to participate with her in them now for nearly 15 years.
Wow.
So it's really fascinating. And of course, there's unity churches that tend to be a little bit more open some of them anyway, with their beliefs. And it's just a reminder too that when we put out that vibe, we attract those that resonate with us also. But, there have been times, especially when I was beginning to do this work and my kids were still in school, that, they said, don't talk about it, Mom. Don't tell anyone. We don't want our friends to know. We don't want their parents to know.
Yeah.
So I've just been, doing what I can, but not making a big deal about it, shall we
Right.
say.
Yeah. It's good to hear that from you because having moved out to Kansas City 10 years ago from Massachusetts,
Yeah.
I hear from my East Coast friend all the time, what are you doing in that red state? Think people in Missouri are backwards. They're all conservatives, blah, blah, blah. And all I can think is, I don't know any of those people,
Right.
but we do, like you said, our energy draws
Hmm.
in that community or
Yes.
draws us to that community. And then we sort of just end up surrounded by our tribe, I think probably no matter where we go.
I would agree with that. And
Yeah.
part of it too is, really when we recognize too that, we are experiencing life through that lens of the emotion that we feel in the moment. So even what we perceive, that's how we're going to see life through. And it's not that, we're avoiding things or bypassing or anything like that. It's just really like, this is what's in my awareness. And I may not be recognizing the fear or the worry or things like that, or, what other people don't believe either.
Yeah. 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 That's a good point. Um, I'm glad you mentioned the bypassing because I'm a big, I'm a
Yeah,
big,
it's like,
big
oh,
believer of, when somebody tells me to let it go, I want to strangle them in a spiritual way.
yes,
I
yes.
just, um, the
With
whole
all love and
idea.
light, love and
Yeah,
light.
yeah, yeah. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't work. Not if you're being honest.
Right.
You're just. I was watching some little clip or something. It might have been a reel on Facebook or on TikTok or something like that. But it was showing how a peanut grows, and they did sort of a cutaway. Stuck the peanut in the dirt, but you could see it.
Okay.
You could see how the roots come out, and you could see how the plant comes up, and all this stuff. And I was thinking to myself, that's kind of like our feelings, when we bury our feelings deep inside ourselves, deep underground, so to speak. It doesn't mean they just sit there
Right.
and do nothing until we dig them up with a spade down the road. They actually grow. They actually get roots and can anchor in even harder. And
Hmm.
when you dig them up, you don't realize the chaos that's going on down there. And it
Right.
would have been so much better for you if you had just dealt with them in the first place.
Yes, and we use the term spiritual bypassing, but
Yeah.
in reality, there's a lot of people that, if you get angry, if you say the F word, if you do this or
Yeah.
do that, then you're not spiritual. And I'm
Right.
thinking, why would you even say that? If we are here having a human experience and we need to embody all of that experience, it's going to be everything, even unfortunately, the challenges that we face. And a
Yeah.
lot of it is how do we respond to it or are we reacting? And, even walking that fine line, I'm going to just touch on it, Yahweh. We don't have to go in depth
It's
here, but,
okay. It's all right.
the political divide. And it just, boggles my mind at times when I think about humanity and think about consciousness. And I'm a firm believer in the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and just
Yeah.
be kind, be compassionate. And I just can't understand when there's ugly energy coming out of people. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense to me. But people, as they say, hurt people hurt people. So
Yeah.
there's got to be a lot more going on. And my belief too is, in order to heal it, we really got to feel it, but we also got to understand it too,
Yeah.
because if this is coming out, well, and we witness it and it affects us in some way, we have to know there's something for us to heal within ourselves, perhaps, or
Yep.
something that we need to help to heal too.
Yep. Yep. And if we're not doing our work, our inner work, and dealing with whatever it may be within us, how much are we contributing to that
Yeah.
energy around us? I've been called out several times on social media for saying one thing or another, something a little, angry or hurtful or something like that. And I've had people message me privately and say, how can you speak like that? You claim to be this spiritual person. You claim to be this, this Reiki master and this, I used to work at Unity Village and all this stuff. And I'm very disappointed in you. And my first response almost always is, who the fuck are you to be disappointed in me in any way, shape, or form?
Right.
You don't get to choose that. And then after that, it's, you know what? I'm a human being too. And look at your judgment of me is pretty much as hateful as what you're claiming I did.
Exactly. And, as you were saying that, first of all, it's raining here. So if you happen to hear
I
it,
was
it's
going to
raining
ask.
really loud.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We'll try to filter some of that out. We'll
Yes.
see.
But what came up for me is, even hearing my parents, as a child growing up, and, they only know what they know as well, too. But when they say, I'm so disappointed in you,
Yeah.
why would you do that? Or why wouldn't you do that? And, we always feel like we want to cower. And instead, this is a time for us to really feel confident and empowered and really to hold that light, to be that light, and
Yeah.
to recognize that people are going to say and believe and perceive what feels right to them. And that's okay too. If we don't like it, we can scroll past it,
Yeah.
but we can still love one another and, honor one another as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, good stuff. I love this
Yes.
because I love talking to somebody who gets the way I think and who is just open and honest about the whole thing. So this is fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And I want to mention too, because
yeah.
when I think about magic, and this is one thing where we're talking about, sometimes people with that idea of magic, they have that connotation of spells or mysticism
Right.
or anything like that. And
Right.
I like to perceive magic as that essence within us, that power to create, and knowing that we are all powerful creators. And sometimes, once again, our perception, our perspective, how we view things, that's really also what we're creating also.
Yep. Co-creating with the universe and with each other.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. So let me touch on something real quick. Now, you've worn a lot of spiritual hats, whether it's, intuitive medium, author, coach, Reiki master. How did that unfold for you?
So fascinating enough, as I said, I've always known things. I've been sensitive to energies, and I've also realized that I was existing. I was going through the motions. I went to college, raised a family, worked, and all of that, and I just felt like I was, as I said, existing. And I realized there's got to be something more. And I was guided to go over to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, first of all, and had a session with Kat Bernstein at Suchna Spa. That was my first energy work. She does a mixture. I don't think it's Reiki. I think she just calls it chakra work or light body energy work, and had a reading with Gary. And I can't even remember his last name, but I remember he was at the White Light. And just a lot of things clicked. And I was 29 at the time. And then fast forward a few more years, I was like, okay, there's got to be something more. And actually, a healer in Kansas City, reader, came into my awareness, and I had a reading with her, and it was very powerful. And she shared, it was over the phone, so we were not in person, and she shared with me, she said, Shelly, I just have to tell you, your purpose is to shine your light on others and to help others to heal and to see that light within them. And I was like, wow, this is powerful. And she started talking to me about Reiki. And then I became attuned to Reiki with her in 2008, and then completed the master level 2009, and then went on to Karuna Reiki in 2010. And after that, Lisa Williams, a well-known psychic medium, came into my awareness, and I began developing my medium mystic abilities, and then studied with John Holland and James Van Prague and Tony
Wow.
Stockwell, and then just began teaching. So literally from 2008 to 2010, it was really focusing on Reiki and doing healing and my own healing. And then 2010 began that mediumship development. And then 2014, I started teaching at Lilydale Assembly. It's a spiritualist community in Western New York, and they have a season every summer. And so I applied to teach there. That was my first year to teach and taught for 10 years. After that, this year, I did not apply, and it turned out to be a good thing with other things going on in my life. But I've just been doing healings and readings and teaching since that time, too. So it feels like it's still yesterday. I can remember very fondly all of those experiences, but it also seems like it moved very quickly. And here we are, 15 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And within all that, you also somehow found the time to write several books.
Yes, yes. I felt very called, especially to write Journey into Consciousness, because that is my story. It's my life up to my awakening, and then awakening to when the book came out, which was actually 2013. And throughout the book, I shared those experiences that really, what I perceived were pivotal moments in my life. And when I wrote that first portion, that first section of it, I also wrote the lesson that I perceived that I learned in that experience, and also how you could apply it to your own. And then the second portion of the book was my experiences of awakening and different things. I even put some of my journals in there and automatic writing experiences and things like that. And then the third section was tools that I wrote for your journey. And then I wrote a couple of other books. They actually were courses with the Daily Om that I just then flipped and put into book form.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So, within your books, magic is a big theme, and especially embracing
the last one, yes.
Yeah, embracing the magic within. So what did that look like for you when you first got started?
Yeah, so it was fascinating because one of the experiences that were really pivotal too is, recognizing those things that we cannot see, that we have to believe in. And I have had experiences with fairies, and some people think, okay, this is nonsense, this is crazy. Once you believe, they are absolutely apparent, and they do look like Tinkerbell. I just want to say that. And so, had this amazing different experiences and interaction. In essence, one thing that they said is, that magic is within us, and this is how you help others. That all that wonderment, that excited energy that you feel, when you live that, you bring that forth, and others experience too. And that's what called me to write the book, Embracing the Magic Within, which it has a dragonfly on the cover because dragonflies do have a meaning for me as well. But when I wrote that book, it's personal stories interwoven with words of wisdom and tools for your journey. And I did not put chapters in it. I just wrote and put it together, and wrote it also where it could be a type of divination tool. So if you ask it, what do I need to know at this time, and open it up, you'll see what's there for you.
It's the Messiah's Handbook from Illusions.
Yes.
Have you read that book, Richard Bach?
I have not.
My goodness, you need to read it. It'll take you a couple hours. It's such a quick read. Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, wrote a book called Illusions many, many years ago. And I was first turned on to it in 1981. I was in college, and a young lady gave it to me because we had a conversation one night about mystical stuff. And within the book of within the story of the book, there's this thing called the Messiah's Handbook, and it's just sort of a guidepost for people who are coming into their own awareness. But it's designed like that, where you hold the book in your hand and you hold a problem or a concern or whatever, and then when you open it up, the answers are there for you.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah, it's terrific.
And I think that's something we can do with any book too.
I agree.
If we feel called to it, and for those that resonate with the Bible, that is just as effective as well too. Exactly.
Yeah, if you can figure out the wording.
Right. How you want to interpret it.
Yes, exactly right. Well, there's certainly a lot of interpreting of that book going on. So, um, what do you think was and for those that are watching this, I do have notes. I keep it real. I can't remember everything I want to say. So I do have notes. Those that are you're listening, you won't even notice. What was the hardest internal belief you had that you had to shift in order to step fully into your gifts?
That is a good question because what I'm having a flash to, so of course I want to go with that, but it was, definitely part of the religious foundation is that, God is that man in the sky. And, as a kid, I remember being in church thinking, I don't need to be here. God's within me. Wherever I am, God is. And, I am God, which for some people to hear that statement freaks them out too. But that's technically one of Unity's beliefs and principles
Yep.
too. And I didn't even have an awareness of Unity teachings as a child. But when I got older, I really, when it came into my awareness, probably around 2008, 2009 as well, I gravitated towards it, resonated with it. And probably the hardest thing is just releasing some of that. Paradigm that we think of what we've been told, what we've been conditioned, and breaking free of that too. And of course, I'm having a flash to my dad in this moment too, where he was very, um, he's a very smart man. And at the same time, do as I say, not necessarily as I do, but
Yeah.
this is right. I'm always right. And,
Yep.
our opinions, of course, may or may not matter, but it wasn't really conducive to asking a lot of questions
Yeah.
or getting the answers and even trusting what our spirit says. So it was more being in our head rather than listening to our soul and our spirit. So
Yeah.
that's what's coming to me to share in this moment.
It's I get the feeling that that's a very familiar story with anybody that's listening to this podcast. So, and especially when you're talking about not only the religious side of things, but also the parenting side of things. I mean, everybody comes from a different generation, and we all sort of our beginning molding starts
Yes.
there. What would you say? What if there were like one little piece of advice you could give somebody who's not sure what the hell's going on with their lives? They know something's not right. They're not feeling the same way about
Hmm.
their church necessarily, or they're having trouble with relationships. I mean, stuff just seems to be um, unfulfilling for them. But they
Yes.
know they can feel that there's something, but they don't even know where to start. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, so I with that immediately I'd say get out of your head,
Yeah.
listen to your heart, listen to your spirit more because the more that you let it guide you, the more it's going to be right. Because once again, we've been conditioned, we have cultural, we have dogma, we have all kinds of things like that that are influencing who we are.
Yeah.
And, many times too, if we feel like we're in this box or that we have to be a certain way for people to love us or to like us or to be proud of us, in reality, say, but what does your spirit say? And the more that you say, this is what I'm being called to do, this is what I love to do. And when we take action on that, in reality, that's where the magic happens also, because we're not feeling like we've got to do something because someone else thinks we should or because that's what society says is right. It is really listening to our own calling too. And of course, I'm going to put a disclaimer. We don't want to do anything that's illegal or that will harm others or anything like that. But when we're thinking about our own life and we know what our intention is and how we feel, it's important to trust that too.
Yeah. So I'm going to push back a little bit. Shelley, that sounds really scary because um, I have, family that wouldn't understand. I have friends that wouldn't get it.
Mhm.
There's really not a big community around me that thinks that way. And I know that something's off in me, and I know that, I really want to be on a different path, but it's really scary to make those changes. How can
Yes.
I do that?
Yes, well, if sometimes it is allowing yourself to stay in your power, to disconnect from people too. I'm having a flash because when my book came out, Journey into Consciousness, my mom and I actually disconnected for 3 years.
Wow.
She kept saying I was a liar, I was delusional, I had a mental illness, and she even went so far as to say I was the devil. And it was very hurtful and devastating because we were
Yeah.
very close. And I did not give. We lived 10 minutes apart from one another, and we didn't cross paths for 3 years,
Wow.
which is highly unusual. And I just did my best to stay in my power. And it was a huge growing time. And as I said, it made me sad because my kids, didn't have that connection and things like that. However, when it was the perfect time, we reconnected and we started fresh and we had conversations. And now she views this work as my ministry and I can
That's
talk
great.
about it. So it's not the same for everyone by any means. And I get it. And it can be hard and it can be scary and everything else. But if you're true to you, sometimes you have to trust what is right for you also and really listen to that.
Yep. And to not be afraid if you end up kind of on your own for a little while.
Exactly. And,
Because,
and if you trust too that, the time element, like I said, 3 years, I was like, looking back, it was like, wow, that was crazy.
yeah,
But at the same time, and a few times my stepdad, well, you need to call and make up. I said, there's nothing to make up. I'm not fighting. I'm just not going to be around someone that doesn't value me or doesn't see me as I see myself.
right.
And of course, the universe is really raining down upon us with this in this moment too.
Yeah. That's those are great points because so many times people get so angry at you for your ideas or your feelings or your ideologies. And my first thought is always, how does this hurt you?
Yes,
How are my beliefs something that you refuse to accept? I'm not
exactly.
asking you to believe them. I'm not asking you to buy into it. I'm just saying, please let me be me.
Yeah. And I'm going to go here for a moment too, Yahweh, because these same people that have issues, they will probably have issues with a lot of things,
Yeah.
including other people's religious beliefs, their sexual orientation,
Yep.
their political beliefs,
Yep.
everything else. It's like they can't just live their life.
Right.
They're stuck on thinking that they have control over everyone else's life. And I
Yeah.
have to say, I think that they many times mean well, or they believe that they mean well or have good intentions, but they are also not recognizing, too, this is my life, this is my
Yeah.
choice.
I think something, and naturally, I can't speak for everybody that feels that way, but one of the hardest things that they will have to deal with is the belief inside them that if I accept you the way you are, then I'm wrong
Mm.
in how I think and what I believe because they don't believe the two can mutually coexist.
Yes,
And to try to help them understand that everybody kind of has their own reality, and
very
we
true.
and we create it and co-create it and manifest it on our own and with help of people around us and with help of the universe and spirit if that's what you believe.
Yes,
That doesn't mean you're wrong. I'm not in any way saying you're wrong. I'm just saying
right.
for me it looks like this.
Yes, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about, the afterlife,
Yeah,
because there are some people that believe it doesn't exist,
right.
or their religious foundation and things like that. And I'm like, okay, let's start scientifically. Energy cannot be destroyed. We
Correct.
are energy. We have to continue. And then, of
Correct.
course, with my own connections, knowing that yes, it does continue. It's just not in this physical form as we know it. And I think too, a lot of people, they find comfort and connect with that connection too.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Mhm.
I always wonder, people say, well, what's the afterlife like? My question typically is, what's the before life like? Where was I before that day that I was born?
Mm-hmm.
And do I go back to that? Um, I find it nearly impossible to believe that biologically all of a sudden we're conscious one day.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense to me in any way. And I look at life around us, and the different levels of consciousness in different animals and whatnot, and in different people. And
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think to myself, I believe, and I don't want to take up a lot of time on my thoughts here, but one of the things that I go to is when you go back to the scientific explanations of, like, the Big
Mm-hmm.
Bang, okay? I
Yes.
believe the Big Bang happened, but I also believe that spirit and energy and thought was a part of that bang. I believe there was an original thought, an original
Mm-hmm.
idea that
Mm-hmm.
decided, I'm going to experience.
Yes.
No idea what. I'm just going to experience, and it exploded. Some of that turned into physical matter and became planets and stars and comets and moons and eventually life. But some of that remained consciousness. And I believe that the different manifestations of consciousness, which still maintain that original idea,
Mm-hmm.
also decided to go out and have individual experiences. You know,
Yes. Yeah,
that's
it's a
just what I.
lot to fathom,
It is.
honestly.
It is. It's
Yeah.
one of those. Do I? I probably should smoke a joint when I'm thinking about this,
Yeah, and
because
that
it's one of those
idea.
conversations.
Yeah, I remember too as a child thinking, I'm alive. How am I breathing? How am I
Yeah.
here? And we think about those existential questions. Who am I?
Yep.
Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Thinking, of course, because I believe in Bigfoot, I believe in our friends in the universe, whether we call them starseed or light beings or
Yeah.
aliens. I believe in all of that. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, they can't go there. I think in some
Yeah.
aspects they want to, but it has to be often something tangible.
Yep.
And it has to be literally in their face, or it
Yep.
has to be something easy for them to understand too. And I'm fascinated by all of that. So I just know that there's a lot for us to discover, a lot of us to learn. And once again, the more experiences that we have, these are opportunities for us to learn and to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think once you pull away all that physical stuff, whether it's me and you who are very different, or the alien that showed up last weekend, or somebody that lives on a planet 200,000 light years away. If you strip away all the physical stuff, it's still just souls or spirits or
Energy,
energy,
yes.
whatever it might be. And all of that is the same. All of that is part of the original one that's still there and still
Yes.
expanding and contracting and thriving throughout the entire universe. If there's even one universe, and then that's a whole other
Right.
podcast, I think.
To fathom.
Right. I want to touch on your coaching work a little bit.
Mhm.
So in your coaching work, what's is there a common block that you see, that keeps people from trusting their intuitive knowing?
Well, I feel like a lot of people recognize that they do have that intuitive ability, that they have, whether we call them deja vu experiences or knowingness or whatever it may be. But I think oftentimes they've got to break free once again of that conditioning of recognizing that, you know what? I can trust this. It is real. And, I do teach mediumship development as well. And what I really love, especially working with the nonprofit organization Helping Parents Heal, is helping those parents understand the connection to their child is still very present. And it's really understanding spirit communication, what that is, what that feels like, what it looks like. And the more that we understand that all of us have that ability, we simply have to trust the thoughts, the words, the feelings, the impressions. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So you touched on something interesting there when you said that you taught mediumship development.
Yes.
So there's a school of thought out there that says someone either has the gift or they don't have the gift. You can
Yes.
talk to dead people or you can't talk to dead people. You can see ghosts or you can not see ghosts. And
Yes.
there's no gray ground, and it's not a muscle, so you can't exercise it. So
Right.
how could someone who thinks it's a possibility or is just plain interested in the
Hmm.
possibility, what could be like a simple exercise or two that they could do to start to develop their intuitive muscle?
Right. So the first thing is to kind of get an understanding of, are you more visual? Are you more audible? Are you more clairsentient, where you feel things, an empath? And once you know really where or how you tend to receive your information, then what it is tuning in and acknowledging more what you sense. So, psychic senses are just heightened senses. And so it is trusting that. And then we work with our imagination, use our imagination. So we have to be willing to trust whatever comes into our mind as we do that. And it is understanding the language. It's mind to mind, soul to soul. Sometimes we'll hear things, sometimes we may see things with what we perceive to be our physical eyes, but often it's more with our clairvoyant eyes as well too. I am clairsentient, where I feel things. I can actually tune into someone's energy and feel what they're feeling, or I can tune into someone who has transitioned and feel symptoms they had or how they passed. And I also know things, but I do have the clairvoyant and the clairaudient ability. It wasn't strong at first. And I distinctly remember when I was first doing fairs, another reader, she was very stern as she said this, but I said, I just want the audio visual. And she said, isn't knowing enough? And I said, whoa,
Yeah.
yes, I get
Oh,
it. And as soon as I released attachment to having the visions and having the words, they actually came. So
yeah.
I think sometimes as humans, we are also, in a big hurry. And I'm
Yeah.
hearing to say in a big ass hurry. We're in a big
Yes.
ass hurry all of the time.
We're in
And,
our own
we
way.
we want it now. And also, this is something that is a process that takes time for us to develop it.
Yeah.
And we've got to sit in the power, we've got to meditate, we have to, we're always developing. So, for people that think that, and I'm saying this with love and respect for colleagues, but some people think that they are all that is, it's still a development process. So we have
Yeah.
to really stay humble, be grateful for this opportunity as well.
Yep. Yep. And you have to, I mean, I know when I was as a Reiki master, when I was regularly having clients and stuff, because I haven't in a while.
Hmm.
I always prefaced the Reiki session with the question, if something comes through, if I connect with any kind of energy, something comes up that wants to be said,
Hmm.
are you open to receiving it? Because some people won't. Even someone
Yes.
who understands that Reiki makes them feel good
Yes.
may not necessarily be open to that kind of thing. So you got to kind of respect their space on that.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
so many times messages and energies have come through because you're already connected inside that person's field,
Yes.
in a safe way. And so it's very easy for that energy to flow, for other energies to come in, whether it's premonitions or information from a passed on loved one, or just a little nudge from the universe that says, this person needs just a little shove in that direction. Here, say this.
Say this.
And yeah, I
Yes.
just get the hell out of the way and let it come out. I want one of my keys with my work has always been, I don't have any idea what's going to come out of my mouth. It's just going to come out. And whether it makes any sense to you or not today, I don't really care. It doesn't matter, because at some point it's going to make sense.
Yeah.
But it's going to come out the way it comes out.
Yeah. And I think when we are that channel for
Yep.
healing, and, part of healing may entail hearing from a loved one or hearing from their guides. And, we have to know our intention as we do it. And if we're creating a space for healing to occur, it's something, but as you indicated, it is appropriate and ethical to ask permission for the information to come through
Yep.
and or to deliver the message, because sometimes we receive it and we can give it to them energetically, telepathically without verbally saying it to them, because unless they say, yes, I want to hear it, maybe it's just for us to keep and acknowledge and, as I said, share on an energetic level rather than verbalizing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree, 100%. Something else I've always told clients or even potential clients is you have to hold your power. You have to know that it's okay to say no. I don't want work from you. Whether it's your intuition telling you I don't resonate with this person. And then for me, a big one has always been if somebody looks you in the eye and tells you they can heal you, walk in the other
Run,
direction
run.
because they
Not just
can't.
walk, run.
Yes, run because they can't. No one can heal you.
Yeah.
Even Jesus said, it's not me, but your faith in me
Yes.
that heals. So you do the work. All we do is open up the channels, open up the flow,
hmm
allow things to go as they're supposed to go.
Yeah, creating a space for healing to
Yep.
occur.
Yep.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because throughout my journey, I remember going to several conferences. Dolores Cannon put on conferences in Northwest Arkansas area through her Ozark Mountain Publishing. And these conferences, they were the transformation conference. They were transformational for me. And I had several experiences, one in particular that I recall, in the person's telling me that I had an attachment. And I freaked out. I was very naive. I was like, whoa, okay, well, they didn't remove one, they actually gave one. And, some people say, what do you mean an attachment, this and that? There's various interpretations, but it was more of an energy connection
Yep.
where they would need, or I would need them, is how I need to say
Right.
that.
Right.
And, after the healing, as I put my fingers up in air quotes,
Yeah.
it was not at all. I felt crummy after it. And then they would check in, can I do this again? And each time they wanted money,
Yeah.
which, that was a huge learning opportunity for me. And then I realized after that, I need to practice discernment, as
Yep.
all of us do,
Yep.
and to say, does this feel right? Do I need someone else in my energy field? Is this something
Yep.
that I can work with myself, or things like that? And
Yep.
anytime people approach you in that way, as we said, don't walk, run, and
Yep.
just say, thank you.
Yep.
You decide for yourself.
Yep. Absolutely. I call that enlightened ego, where
Yes.
they're first of all, I don't want a client that's going to be my client forever. I believe my job is to put them in a space where I can help them get the tools. I can
Yes.
even hand them the tools on a silver platter, but they're the ones that have to use the tools. And then once they've learned how to use them correctly, I don't want them to need me for that. I don't want a perpetual
Right.
client. I would love your recommendation for somebody else because, in some cases that's how people make their living.
Right.
But
Right.
but if you're doing exactly what you said, creating cords between themselves and their clients, and then not cutting those cords after every session, not making sure things are clear, and doing that with people who don't even understand what that means. You know what I mean? People who wouldn't even have the concept of them still being attached to me when I walked away, and that's just the worst kind of lack of integrity that
Great.
that exists in this community. And when I see somebody like that, I mean, it's all I can do not to call them out by name sometimes because it's challenging for me because it makes the rest
Absolutely.
of us look bad.
I agree, especially too when people are inappropriate,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
physically as well,
Yeah.
that there's no
Yeah.
call for that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, as you said, those of us that are ethical and want to empower people to know that they have the tools within themselves, it's really challenging for us to sit back and not say something or call someone out
Yeah.
too. And I think if anything, especially if people ask me, well, would you refer this person or would you do this? And I said, you have to feel into it for yourself,
Yeah.
really listen to your heart, your gut. And, if it feels right, then yes, practice, take action on that. But if it doesn't, don't, don't
Yep.
feel like someone has to, make you do something. They don't have that power over you.
Yeah, absolutely. My first session with somebody is always about resonance. Do I resonate with you? Do you resonate with me?
Hmm.
And if one of us says no, then we walk away and that's okay. And
Yes.
it's perfectly okay. I don't have ego attached to it. There was a time where ego would play into it, where I wanted to be the most famous whatever, but I let go of that a long time ago because I actually was able to be present for the healing of some people in a very profound way. And that right there was enough for me. And I was just like, okay, that's what this is about. It's not about I healed that person. I'm great.
Yeah.
Spread my name around because I can do it for your friends. No, it's about holy shit. We just had an amazing experience and you found
You
your
had a
way.
moment.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think too
Um,
that, it is really understanding our intention, just to touch on that. What is our intention for doing it?
yep, yep. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Um, in your book, 28 Days to a New You, you offer practical transformation, correct? Okay,
Yes.
so
And I'll tell the secret. It's
yeah, I was
you
going to ask
shift
you what
your, yeah,
inspired that
yeah,
structure
what
and what made you come up with just 28 days? Why not
yeah.
21 or 30 or
Well, the idea is it takes 28 days often or to change a habit.
yeah,
And, this, as I said, was a course originally for the Daily Om. And so that worked out 4 weeks, 28 days. But the secret behind it is shifting your perception.
yep,
So it's just taking a look. You can change in one day if you choose to, but it is knowing, what do I perceive? How am I looking at life? What lens am I looking through? And that's what you're changing or shifting.
yeah, yep, great. So I want to talk briefly about well, maybe not briefly, but about moving through fear and kind of staying aligned through that.
Hmm.
So we talked about you having faced maybe some skepticism or judgment early on, and who knows,
Hmm.
maybe even now. Um,
Right.
how did you stay rooted in that? So with, let's say, with your mom in particular, you
Hmm.
mentioned that you stood your ground, you held your power, but how do you do that, especially when it's somebody who's so important to you?
What I found is to really understand, does this feel like I'm dimming my light? If I am wanting to keep her happy, how does this feel to my own light, to my own life? And once I realize that, I have to walk my talk and talk my walk and be in the light myself, then that is really the most important thing. And as I said, sometimes it was lonely, and
Yeah,
we don't necessarily want to be challenged in that way. But once you get to the other side of whatever the fear or the challenge may be, oftentimes we also have an understanding of, this was also my greatest growth or my biggest opportunity to remind myself of who I am, why I'm here, what I'm supposed to be doing. And even now, sometimes when I do sessions, not that I feel like I'm an imposter or anything like that, but sometimes I am in my head where I'm like, oh, I hope that I bring the healing this person is seeking. I hope I make the connection. I hope this and that. And I have to quickly come back and say, what is my intention? And all I can do is offer what comes through. I have to stay grounded. I have to stay centered and balanced, because my energy or anything that affects my energy can affect a connection as well. And knowing too that sometimes I've had sessions that I came away with just feeling like it could have been better. It wasn't enough evidence, this and that. And I sit with it for a bit and I ask for understanding. And also, what I realize as well is that my humanness, as I say this, is saying, does what I do matter? Does
Yeah.
it matter? And
Yeah.
then, when I don't want to say I'm moping by any means, but I get into my humanness and say, do I need to keep doing this? Does it matter? Inevitably, the universe will show me, or someone will send me an email, or, something that happened 6 months ago, and they'll tell me, Shelly, this experience or this connection, it changed my life. And I'm like, whoa. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm not one to blast on social media what I have shared or the experiences. If people want to share that, absolutely. I do have testimonials that people have sent to me that I post on my website, or they can post it on two different websites that I'm listed on, that they just goes to them directly. But
Yeah.
I'm not one to just constantly put that out there too.
Right. Right. That's You sort of answered my next question, because I was going to ask you what happens when that human self-doubt shows up, even in somebody who's been doing this for, as many years as you have,
Hmm.
and has got, a good following, and is got, is credible in so much of the circle. And still, we're human,
We're human.
and we have
Yes.
those moments. Yeah. So I'm glad you touched
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Um, are there any like daily or weekly practices that maybe you could recommend to help stay connected to your authentic self?
Hmm. Yeah, the best thing too is when I get up in the morning, check in, how am I feeling today? Physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, how am I feeling? And if I'm not feeling balanced or healthy, then I've got to do something to get balanced and healthy. That may be go outside, go for a walk, maybe make sure I'm hydrated, things that we know to do to take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
And sometimes in the afternoon, it may be, I need a little nap. I need
Yeah.
to recharge my batteries, or I need to go to bed early. So I think the common sense things that we need to do for ourselves are imperative. And also, even recognizing that cocooning is great. Having boundaries, sometimes we don't have to be available to everyone all of the time. In other words, having a distinct clarification of when I'm accessible.
Yep.
I have my landline listed on my website. Yes, I still have a landline. And sometimes people call me literally middle of the night, and they may be in different time zones and such, but I will answer, and then I'm like, seriously, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, oh, we didn't think you'd answer. And I'm like, well, why'd you call? I mean, what is this all about? So just things like that.
Yeah. If you were just going to leave a message, you could have emailed me.
Right, right, exactly.
Right. That's Yeah, I get it. So you mentioned, and we hear this a lot in the particularly in the coaching community, but also in the other aspects of the spiritual community, where we say something like you just did about I check in every morning. It sounds simple, and yet there's going to be so many people that go, I don't really understand what that means. So what would or there's going to be people who say just check in with yourself, just do this, but they don't actually have a process for doing that. They just get out of bed, and if they don't feel good, they might stay in bed for a little while. But that's not really a check-in. So what simple thing would you say someone can do starting tomorrow morning?
So my process with that, literally, I open my eyes. I prefer to not set an alarm unless I just absolutely have to. But typically, the sun starts coming up. That helps me to wake up. And as I'm just opening my eyes, I'll just kind of say, let me move my body. Anything feel uncomfortable, anything physical going on, sit up, start moving around, check in with how does my mind feel? Do I feel still a little sleepy, a little groggy? Little things like that. And then just on an energetic level, because sometimes we can feel awake. Physically, our body feels good, but we feel whether there's external things going on, because sometimes the weather can affect us,
Yep.
the collective conscious energy can affect us, things like that. Just say, okay, where am I at right now? I still feel a little tired. Okay. I don't drink coffee and I don't drink pop, so there's no caffeine going in. So I'm going to hydrate, but sometimes I'll let me get a piece of chocolate. Okay, that's going to be a little burst of sweetness and caffeine coming in that way, but it is not overthinking it really. It
Yep.
is just
Yep.
saying, let me just tune in what's going on. And throughout the day, listening to your body. If it's hungry, eat. You may actually eat at a normal time or regular time, but if your body's saying, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, things like that, listen to it.
Yeah.
And throughout your day, do your best to be adaptable, be flexible. Sometimes we have things that are unexpected. That's why it's unexpected. And instead of being reactive to it, be responsive. Just say, okay, let me just take a moment to pause. Let me check it out. And that can be something with an unexpected bill come in or
Yeah.
something that needs repaired. Okay, and usually it takes our energy very quickly, zaps us when that happens, but instead say, okay, well, let me make a phone call or let me check this out and then be responsive to it.
Yep. Yep. So what would you offer the person who, when they open their eyes, their first thought is, "Oh crap! I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. Something big is coming here. I got to
Yeah.
do that. I got to do this." And all they're really doing is worrying about the future of their day.
Yes, yeah. And right away, if you're opening your eyes and you're already thinking, there's a high probability that you weren't sleeping really good anyway, because
Yeah.
you might have already been thinking about that before you went to bed too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And reality, it's good if we can clear our mind and just write things down on paper. And
Yeah.
I have lists everywhere. And my calendar, I still write it out. I don't have the digital version. So it helps me if I write things down and mark things off when they're done. But also, when I clear my mind, it allows space for guidance and clarity and solutions to come in too. So, whenever we've got that space, the inspired thoughts come to us.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me ask you, what kind of little piece of advice would you offer somebody who is maybe afraid to be seen in their truth, especially publicly? What
Yes,
what encouragement could you give them?
I would tell them, first of all, let's take a big deep breath and just open yourself up and feel the possibility and the potential that is available to you. And then feel into how you feel now in this moment before you make a change. And then can you see yourself in that change? Can you see yourself in that possibility? And which feels better? And sometimes they may say, well, I feel excited, but I'm still afraid. Let's say, let's breathe into it again and feel that potential and that possibility and see how that feels to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Start feeling what it's going to be like when you actually are living your day that way,
Mm-hmm.
and you will find a way to get past
Yes.
the
And
concerns and the fears.
And I'll just share very briefly here, but
Yeah.
my husband and I have been challenged this year, especially. He's had a lot of health issues
Hmm.
over the past few years, but he actually finally has a diagnosis, and he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And, we're grateful for that awareness, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And, we're obviously treating the symptoms, and some days seem to be really good and other days not so much. And he also had cervical surgery, and in 6 weeks he's going to have lumbar surgery. And so I've also really recognized too, here being support for him, but also doing the task that he's physically not able to do. I'm really striving for balance and also recognizing what matters. And I've had to cancel some events that I was participating in, things that especially involved overnight stays or travel. And I have, of course, felt what I felt in the moment when I had to do that because that
Sure.
was necessary. But I've also realized, you know what? Let me just see what today brings. Let me be present. And even the gift of even more compassion I've been blessed with that because I thought I was compassionate before, and now it seems to be coming in even stronger because you never know what people are going through. And sometimes people don't want you to know. They're very private and they want to
Yeah.
keep it to themselves. But you may notice or sense something that is not right or feels right, and you want to use the perfect words because a lot of times people unfortunately fail miserably when they're talking about things. They don't know how to handle grief or death or challenges, and so just we have to understand the language and being able to communicate and offer support and compassion.
Um, let me just share something with you real quick. Um, so I've had my own like bout with health issues over the last
Hmm.
several years, whether it's ulcers or heart issues, pacemaker. I had a new valve put in. And I have to say that Alara, having done her work, my wife, um, is pretty much exactly what you just described. She's there for me. She's supportive of
Hmm.
me. She's picking up the slack where there were times where I couldn't do anything. I mean, we literally
Hmm.
moved. We moved from one apartment to a house a couple of years ago, and I physically could not do anything except put away dishes. I couldn't lift boxes, I couldn't
Hmm.
move stuff, and she did all this stuff with herself and the help of my older son. And I have to look you in the eye and tell you that your husband is so freaking grateful for you right now
Thank you.
because you've done your work. And there are people out there that have not done their work that may not even stay in a
Yes.
situation like that. So I'll thank you
Yeah. Thank
as a
you.
guy who's been through this, but I promise you that your husband is 100% grateful for you.
Yes, and he shares that regularly
I
throughout
hope
the
so.
day
I
too.
hope so.
So,
If not, tell him to call
yes.
me because
Yes,
I'll,
he does.
I'll shake the tree a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And, in the same sense, too, with that, Yahweh is understanding, too, that you and my husband as well, you've been in this point where you've had to receive,
Yeah,
that I'm sure
yeah, it's
you've had a
hard.
lot of emotions, maybe feeling inadequate or, whatever other word may be coming in. But
Yeah,
I know that's a word that he uses himself. And I said, you got to let that go. This is a
yeah,
time for you to really understand that healing your body is going to help to heal your mind
yeah,
and heal on every level too. So, surrender, allow, release, and trust that this is taken care of. And if it's not something I can do, I have resources that, I can get support from as well. So we have to trust that. And this is for anyone listening too. Don't feel like you're tackling things alone. At the same time, feel what you're feeling because some days I just feel like I need to scream and let it all out. And then I'm
yeah,
back to center again and, feeling more balanced too. But it is really doing what you can and also recognizing what matters and what doesn't matter and be willing to be adaptable and flexible.
yeah. I obviously I can't speak for your husband, but I would imagine there's not that many years between him and I can tell you that one of the hardest things in the world is to receive from other people. When you've
Yeah.
grown up in the 60s, the
The
70s.
masculine, yes.
Yes, you grew up in that, and you as a little boy, you're not allowed to cry, and you suck it up and you move on. And then when
Mm-hmm.
it's time for you to be the man of the house, for me, it started at 9 years old. Um, you just do your fucking job,
Yeah.
and you
And keep your
compromise
mouth shut.
everything,
And keep
and
your
you
mouth
shut up.
shut.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if something aches and something pains, you don't talk about it,
Hmm.
which quite honestly has led to a lot of us being sicker than we should have been
Yes.
because we didn't talk about it.
Right.
So it's a tough thing for us to learn, and thank God for women like you or for partners like you
Hmm.
who get it and are compassionate and are there to kind of help us find our way through that kind of thing
Yes.
as well. So, because to be honest with you, when you compile the health issues on top of me having to completely change the masculine profile that I'm used to,
Hmm.
that's a lot.
It is a
That's a
lot, but
lot.
you're doing great. You're doing great. So
And
just keep it up.
absolutely, absolutely. In your book, Embracing the Magic Within, you said, make the choice to love yourself for who you are completely and fully.
Yes.
So, can you take us through maybe a personal moment where that choice shifted for you?
Yeah, so it is, understanding the physical body, of course, and really, I think of as we age, our bodies change, our skin changes, our appearance changes, things like that. And, it is loving ourselves through all of that and really appreciating too this vessel that is housing our spirit, our soul, and loving it every aspect of it. And, even thinking too, as part of our humanness, the choices that we made along the way, that sometimes we look back and think, oh, what was I thinking? Why did I make that choice? But we always make the choice in the moment that we think is right,
Yeah.
and sometimes there may be external influences affecting us. And in reality, we don't want to look back in guilt or regret or shame, even though those emotions may arise. We want to say, you know what? That was a huge learning opportunity, and now here I am 10 years later, 20 years, 30 years later. Would I make the same choice? Probably not, but I also have a lot more wisdom that I've acquired in that time span too.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Excellent. The
Yeah.
You touched on a little bit in there of the changes that we go through and having to deal with that. Just looking in the mirror some days
Yes.
and the judgment that we have for ourselves. And this occurred to me just a couple of days ago where I think I was scrolling through some memories on Facebook or something and looking at some of the pictures of when I wasn't all that healthy and, some of the changes that I was going through. And I
Mm-hmm.
remembered quite clearly not feeling good about myself at all and looking in the mirror and just not even wanting to keep looking. Just, I
Yes.
wanted to look away. I didn't like my smile. I didn't like the puffiness that was around my eyes. I didn't like,
Mm-hmm.
there was so much about me that I was just picking apart.
Right.
And then I did my work and I continued to do my work. And I was just like, all of a sudden, one day I was like, oh, you know what? I had a good haircut and I'm starting to feel good about myself. And then it just became a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I started going to the gym and I started tanning
Yeah.
and looking healthier and feeling better. And I got the
Feeling.
physical
Yes.
stuff squared away. And then I look
Yeah.
in the mirror and I go, wow, I'm really, 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 really good looking. I
Yes.
just, you just start to finally feel good about yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of it is that emotion that
Yeah.
you're feeling in that moment too,
Yeah. And you have to remember that it's not going to happen overnight necessarily, but
Hmm.
stick it out and keep trying and keep reminding yourself that there's more value than just what you see in the moment,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
what's really good looking is who you are as a whole. And then
Yeah.
everything around you seems to change. And whether I got better looking because I became more healthy, or whether it's just my perception of what a good looking guy is, I don't have any idea, but I don't
Yeah.
care. because I'm finally in this place where I'm happier about who I am and what
Yeah,
I,
and let
yeah,
me pause for a moment with that, Yahweh, because you do care, but you don't care how other people, it's
yeah,
one of those things. You're more concerned with your own perspective
yeah,
and how you feel versus others, because we are
yeah,
still conditioned with what are people going to say? Are they going to be judgmental? Are they going to
yeah,
do this or that? Because we're
yeah,
running everything through that filter, and instead saying, you know what? It's not that I don't care what they think. It's like I'm not attached to their
right,
perspective, because
right.
people are going to have their own regardless.
It's exactly right. And the cool thing about that whole concept is the less you care about how other people view you,
Yes,
the more positively they view you.
right. Because
It
it's
it
really a
really does
vibe.
come back around, where
Yeah,
I don't give a shit if you think I'm cute, but you just said I'm cute.
yeah. And I
It's
feel
one of
cute.
those.
I feel
Yes,
cuter now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like there's that meme. Feeling pretty. I don't know. Maybe I'll do this today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, there was an article in Authority magazine where you said we can simply choose to let love lead the way. Each one of us is creating a ripple by letting um, our love flow and embracing the magic within.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the metaphor of the ripple shows up a lot in your work.
Yes.
And what are those ripple moments from your own life? Can you think of maybe one or two ripple moments that
Yeah.
have surprised you?
Yeah, well, I just had a flash to one of my teachers in elementary school. And, this idea of, thinking about those people that affect us, that say something. And it can be what we perceive to be positive or not so positive too. But it creates that reminder within us that, if even as we're talking about Yahweh, you look great today, man, you're really hot, and how that energy feels and wells up within you, and you're like, oh, I feel good. That energy is rippling outwards. On the converse, and say, yeah, you look like you haven't slept. How's that feel?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, that energy ripples outwards. So once we make a conscious effort to be a conscious intentional ripple, I love to talk to people when I go to the store. I make it a practice to take note and to say, are you having a good day? How do you feel? Or I admire something, give them a compliment. Because when I notice something in someone, that energy will shift, especially if I can sense that it's been a tough day or they're busy. And, my husband always says, do you have to talk to everyone? And I said, I don't talk to everyone, but I talk to those that I feel can make a difference, especially in the service industry. If someone's in a restaurant or at the grocery store, when we touch that one person, they're going to create a ripple as well. And when we think of love being that guiding force in all that we think, say, and do to the best of our ability, because once again, we're human, we have to just keep in mind how that energy is expanding.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have to talk to everyone? No, but I'm choosing to
I
talk to
know.
everyone.
And what's funny is we were in the store yesterday and someone started talking to him and he looks at me and I'm like, just go with it. Just go with it, Because I wasn't even there.
They're a
I just
kindred
happened to
spirit.
come around the corner. Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. I have a habit of, and I'm trying to teach my son this. I have a habit of choosing the longer line because it gives me a moment in my day to just be with
Yes.
my thoughts for a minute, or I
Yeah.
could, have a good conversation with somebody, or I could observe people.
Fine.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not trying to rush through and get
Yep,
out.
yep. And then they'll
Yeah.
open up another register and call me over, and I'm just like, nope, take somebody else. I
Yeah.
I chose
I'm
this line for a
good.
reason, so
Oh no.
yeah,
And once again, whether you say you learn patience or being adaptable or being flexible,
yep,
but I think, if we can be very mindful and be very present throughout our day, to me, it just makes the day better
yeah,
too, because it's
yeah,
like, let me be where I am in this moment.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
I did want to touch on your other two books just briefly. The 28 Days to a New You. We talked about the structure
Mm-hmm.
of the 28 days already. So if someone could only feel like they could commit to one lighthouse shift in a month,
Mm-hmm.
which transformation from your program would you recommend? And could you briefly talk about what a lighthouse shift is?
Yeah, so this idea too is if we're just, an aha moment, whether we think about it being a light bulb, a lighthouse, whatever it may be, it's just saying, I get it now. I understand it. And so when we're in that space of conscious awareness of being able to tune in and look at things differently than we did before, that's a shift in perspective. And it really changes our life too. So, out of all of my books, for people that are fascinated about my journey, I would definitely recommend Journey into Consciousness. And for those that want information that is more evolved in regards to my own growth and expansion, and then what I've included would be Embracing the Magic Within. The other two books, Connect to the You Within and 28 Days to a New You, for those that want a course type book, I encourage you to write in the book. Of course, if you're buying it as an ebook, you can't write in it, but you can make some notes
Yeah.
on a tablet. That may be something that you're looking at. And I do teach classes online. I just scheduled some full day classes. I typically teach series or I teach Reiki online, but I
Yeah.
was guided to go ahead and teach just a full day workshop. I've got one on energy exploration, one on intuitive/psychic development, and one on mediumship development. And I'm
Wow.
currently writing one that is understanding spirit communication. That one is going to be out very soon once I go through it one more time just to make sure I've got the handout exactly as I want it. Because when people take classes with me, I don't record the class because I want them to feel comfortable to share as they're guided to without the fear of is this going to be out there
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
And I do keep my classes smaller so that they're intimate. Some of the classes may have 20 people, but most of them will have 10 to 12
Okay.
as a max, and there may not be that many registered in them, of course. But I like for people to be able to ask questions to share as they're guided to throughout the class time as well.
So when you have the smaller classes like that,
Hmm.
and you see the resonance that may develop from it, is that a class that you may offer again at some
Yes,
point? Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
definitely. And I like to mix it up. Some people are available during the week.
Yeah.
Sometimes people prefer evening. Sometimes people need the weekend.
Yeah.
So I definitely, when people reach out and say, I'd really like this, but I just can't make this time work. And I said, well, what's a day option that works? And, I will probably schedule one in the future for that time too.
Yeah. That's great. That's great that
Mhm.
you're able to be that flexible and really offer it all out there to whoever's ready for it in the
Right,
moment, which is great.
right.
Because to me, that's one of the big keys is, set aside your ego. You may not have a full capacity, but you're going to have everybody that's ready for it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and I always believe whether it's an in-person class or Zoom class that whomever is there is meant to be there.
Yep.
We
Yep.
think of Sonia Choquette, she uses that term, a divine appointment.
Yep.
So I always trust that they're there for a reason. And I always love when people, even on Zoom, they make connections with someone else. They resonate
Yeah.
and they want to connect afterwards. And they
Yep.
still, they maintain that connection and often develop a friendship.
Yeah. There's a common theme really in all your books, and you talk about presence, you talk about love, you talk about magic, and you talk about authenticity.
Yes.
So can you um, just kind of share with me or with the listeners um, how these these themes have all kind of worked together in your own life?
So I like to write about what I know, what I experience, because to me that, not that I'm an expert by any means, but I feel like it's relatable or something that I can expand upon and make it relatable with others too by even sharing my own experiences. And so I have learned definitely through my own growth of knowing how, living in the future or trying to plan everything doesn't feel good, on a
Yeah.
mental, emotional level. And and same goes for living in the past and trying to revisit and rehash and have those coulda, woulda moments and everything else. So being mindful, being present is probably one of the greatest gifts that I chose to receive and that I chose to practice. And then that reminder of being who we are, being present, shining our light, not feeling like we've got to play small or to dim it for others, just to make others feel comfortable. And once again, recognizing that each person is having their individualized human life experience. And there may be things that we agree with and resonate with, and things that we don't, but we can still love the person and
Yeah.
honor their journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got some great tools out there. You've got some great books. You've got, your personal sort of path that you're on. What are some of the really key teachers that you've experienced, whether it's live or you've really studied their books? Can
Mhm.
a few really key teachers that have helped you become what and who you are today?
Yes, well, as I mentioned before, there were several mediums that I studied with, and
Yep.
these were
Yep.
all in-person classes that I had
Okay.
taken. Lisa Williams, John Holland, James Van Praagh, Tony Stockwell.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that there are several books. Of course, I've got them listed on my website on the resources page for listeners and viewers that would like to read my list of suggestions. But I actually have three books that I recommend to everyone that have been pivotal on my journey. And I know narrowing it down to three is says a lot. But the first book is The Four
Four
Agreements by
four
Don Miguel
agreements.
Ruiz.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people really recognize that that is a guidebook for living life, and it's a guidebook for relating to others.
Mhm.
Once we understand and live by those four agreements, it will change our life. The second book is The Power of the Heart. This is by Baptiste de Pape. He's written a book and then he also created a movie, and they're different, completely different. So I recommend that. He is an attorney that felt like he was existing and going through the motions. So he decided to make a movie and write a book about it. And he has several well known spiritual teachers in this movie and this book that, really reminds us too of listening more to our heart and letting that guide us. And then the last book is Whatever Arises, Love That. That's by Matt Kahn. And in that book, it helps us to understand our own upbringing and conditioning and other people's life journeys too, and doing our best to not take it personally, which is one of the four agreements, but to recognize too that there are blessings always within challenging situations as well. We just have to love it, even when it doesn't feel very loving at times.
Yeah. Yeah. The Matt Kahn's book and the Four Agreements are actually on my nightstand right now.
Great.
What was the name of the other one? And you said he
The
did
Power of the Heart.
the
Yeah, The
Power of the Heart. And
Power
you
of the
said, did he
Heart.
do it
Uh-huh.
in documentary form?
Uh-huh. Well,
Okay.
it's fascinating because it is somewhat like a documentary, but there's also a portion of the movie that is a movie, because it's
Okay.
talking about what happened in Rwanda
Oh, okay.
and the genocide and all kinds of things. It's just a very well done movie, and I'm sure that you can find it online at this
Yep.
point
Yeah,
too.
it's probably on Gaia or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah. This is great. Oh, Shelley, this is great stuff. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next time we can talk. I want to thank you for your grace, your candor. I want to thank you for sharing both your art and your heart with us
Thank
today.
you. Mhm.
It's clear that when we choose love, we open the door to our own magic. So, could you please share how folks can find you, share anything you want to share? You want to plug a book or two, go for it. Just give yourself, talk about Shelley for a minute.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Yahweh. And of course, I've just enjoyed every moment of our conversation today. And listeners can find me at ShellyRWilson.com. It's ShellyRWilson.com. If you don't put the R in there, you're going to get someone that's not me. That you may be surprised. You might just want to click on that just to see who it is. But otherwise, I also have a website, journeyintoconsciousness.com and embracingthemagicwithin.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. I periodically create some videos for YouTube. I keep telling myself that would probably be a good thing, but it's one of those things I decide where to invest that time and energy.
Sure.
As I indicated, I do offer coaching sessions as well as mediumship sessions to make connections, and I do offer clarity sessions. Now, I'm not a fortune teller, but I will offer what comes through. And as I indicated, I've got several courses available online right now. The ones that are available, I have a Reiki class coming up. We'll be scheduling more. Also have several full-day workshops over the next 2 months that are currently scheduled. And I, of course, will schedule more once I am guided to do so, or when people reach out and say, yeah, I just couldn't make that time. What about another opportunity? So please feel free to do that.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
To our listeners, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This is Yahweh. And until next time, remember that you're getting closer to aligned AF every single day. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. If this episode spoke to you at all, share it with a friend or someone who needs it. You can also leave a review or connect with me online. You can find Aligned AF on YouTube, Facebook, your favorite podcast channel, or at alignedaf.org. And if you want to reach out directly, you can email me at alignedafpodcast@gmail.com. So until next time, stay aligned AF.